Coming up in the National Report, the office of the Prime Minister rocked by a brutal killing. ZNS is on the scene.
Also tonight, police have their hands full with another nighttime shooting death.
And then hear what Rollins has to say to the State Minister of National Security. The Bahamas tonight, the National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Tragedy shakes the media and the office of the Prime Minister. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keishla Adderley.
And I'm Candino Knowles. Well, a government-registered vehicle was found crashed into a lamp pole in White's Lane just off Market Street this morning. Upon police investigation, Deputy Director of Bahamas Information Services, Latori Mackey, was found on the inside of that car, dead with gunshot wounds to the neck. Janana Ferguson, who was on the scene at 5 o'clock this morning, has all the details.
Just heard a few shots and then I heard when the car hit the lamp pole.
For this Market Street resident, the all-too-familiar sound prompted him to call police around 4:30 Monday morning. It would later be confirmed that the victim was 37-year-old Latori Mackey, Deputy Director of Bahamas Information Services.
The guy was still in slouch over inside the car, so I carried on back inside and called the cops. Yeah, I think the person might have been in the vehicle with him.
Bystanders reported seeing a car speed away from the area and seeing someone flee on foot from the scene. Mackey's body remained inside the black Kia SUV as police conducted their initial investigation. They were tight-lipped on the details.
Checking the vehicle, they discovered the body of a male leaning on the right side. He had apparent gunshot injury to the neck. And EMS personnel was conducted and arrived on the scene where they did an examination and discovered that there were no vital signs of life. And I don't want to go too much into and releasing any further details.
Later Monday morning at the House of Assembly, Parliamentary Secretary Renwood Wells and MP for Fort Charlotte Andre Rollins, who would have served with Mackey in the now defunct National Democratic Party, remembered Mackey, who was the NDP's candidate for Clifton, as a great friend and role model.
Tori and I had a conversation on Friday. We were talking about all of the issues that surrounds me, that surrounds Andre, that surrounds Greg, that surrounds the issues within the Progressive Liberal Party, where the country ought to be going, how young professionals fit themselves into a party and into a society, and how we empower each other, how we develop this economy going forward, how we look at the next generation. And interestingly enough, he was speaking about one of what he believed was one of the solutions to the crime problem in this country, which is getting young men into a national service.
But when you see that you wake up first thing in the morning and you hear that a member of the government, the press secretary of the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, is gunned down violently, it tells you we should never be talking about trivia in the governance of this country.
While Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis commended Mackey for his work within the party and spoke of the negative impact of crime.
If one life is lost, I mean, sometimes we pay more attention because there are 4 or 5 minutes at one time or in the space of a couple hours, but one life being lost at the hands of a criminal is sufficient and heightens the need for us to continually address those ills that impact upon our society.
Mackey was also the owner of the Blue Reef Club. Mackey reportedly left his establishment shortly after 3 and was found dead some 2 hours later. Now, police were dealing with murders all weekend, and it obviously spilled over into Monday morning. It's the 4th murder they've had to deal with in just a number of days, and according to our records, the 82nd murder for the year. Janana Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Well, as the devastating news quickly spread throughout the capital of Mackey's death, Prime Minister Christie, like so many others, paused to talk about his contributions and his overwhelming love for country.
As Clint Watson tells us, the Prime Minister is renewing calls for an end to the violence and restoration of peace over our country.
I was shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. A shared emotion of just about every member of the Christie administration as they were forced to come to grips with the tragic slaying of Deputy Director of Bahamas Information Services and Press Officer to the Prime Minister, Pt.1 Mackey.
Calm, no violent thoughts, no violent expressions. And so you least expected to have him the subject of the kind of horrific incident that happened with him.
When people who appeared to be the victim of circumstance and not necessarily people attached to crime gunned down, it's an indicator that the issue has gotten out of control, requiring intervention.
We cannot compromise on the safety and security of our citizens. We cannot have a situation develop where people are fearful to be out.
The Prime Minister says the influence of foreign media and popular culture figures who endorse a violent behavior are having a negative impact on Bahamians. There's also the issue of illegal weapons.
And when you find young men on the streets could go and find a 45 or a 38 or whatever else, and now AK-47s, you know we have a challenge and a problem. And we have to find out where it is, and we have to be relentless in our effort to find out. And we have to dedicate more resources to doing so.
He says Latoury's death, like so many others, should influence policy and change.
If it happened to him, it can happen to you, or to me. And these are the matters that must concern us, because people who are engaged in that kind of attack, right, clearly are beyond reasoning, and we have to find them, we have to know what's happening, and we have to be able to address these issues, because otherwise, as a country, we're going to be sort of going down a road that is almost uncontrollable, and that's.
Now, Prime Minister Christie says he intends to meet with the persons responsible for addressing issues in the country regarding crime, and once he would have had those meetings, he'll come back to the public and discuss the strategy going forward. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
There were just hours between that murder and the fourth murder on record to take place here in the capital this weekend. It was around 8:30 last night when detectives rushed to the scene of a fatal shooting in Nassau village. Our LTV's Munnings was the only reporter on the scene.
Our news team arrived on Price Street in Nassau Village the same time as paramedics Sunday night. A woman was helping the paramedics move the murder victim's body from the side of the road. Police quickly cordoned off the area, though, from the residents who assembled anywhere they could to view the police's investigation. Now here's what we know. Authorities say that sometime around 8:30 p.m. Sunday, a 22-year-old male resident of Price Street was walking north on that road when three men in a black Honda Civic approached him.
One of the occupants exited the vehicle, which was also being followed by a male on a trail motorcycle. And we believe at least three of those individuals were armed with handguns, discharged their weapons in the direction of this male that was walking. He was struck multiple times to his body, and we summoned EMS here and transported him to Princess Margaret Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead by doctors there. Always concerned with the number of guns that are not only in these incidents, but the illegal firearms that are in possession of Bahamians. And I hope they can appreciate the consequences. This is the kind of thing that we find.
A number of police vehicles were there as several officers had to contain the growing crowd of onlookers. But head of the Central Detective Unit, Superintendent Paul Roll, couldn't reveal at the scene a motive for this murder.
These are just a few bad boys who don't know how to behave themselves. We have identified a number of them, and we will take the necessary action to take them into custody in the quickest possible time. These are a group of men who seem to be having a feud, and we are talking to them and trying to find out what's the problem.
Detectives are confident someone knows exactly what happened on Price Street Sunday night, and they're appealing to that person to contact the police as soon as possible. LTV's Munnings, ZNS Network News.
Well, former Gaming Board Chairman Rollins, who was fired Friday over comments made in the House of Assembly on the leadership of the Progressive Liberal Party, which has been categorized as out of line by the Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis, is commenting on his recent dismissal. Mr. Rollins told members of the media outside of the House of Assembly today that he believes that his firing was all for political show.
It was really all for public consumption to say that you're going to fire somebody when there's 8 days left, according to the claims by the government, 8 days left in that individual's tenure. As far as I was aware, the boards had not been reappointed. So I really think that it was a useless exercise, one filled with political theatrics that amounted to nothing more than political posturing. But at the end of the day, it's not about the gaming board. I mean, I didn't get into politics for an office or because I aspire to be leader right away, as some people are speculating. That's not what it's about. I really genuinely want to see us bring about change in this country. And for those who question my motives, that's their right.
Are you still a member of the Progressive Liberal Party?
Yes, I am.
You still plan to remain a member of the Progressive Liberal Party?
I am still a member of the Progressive Liberal Party, and I will continue to fight for change within the Progressive Liberal Party.
Well, that was former Gaming Board Chairman Andre Rollins, who was speaking about his firing on Friday over comments made in the House of Assembly on the leadership of the PLP. Rollins also fired back to Minister of National Security Keith Bell, or Minister of State for National Security Keith Bell, who challenged Rollins to run as an independent during a by-election to see if he would be successful in winning a seat in the House of Assembly. Rollins said he was disappointed in what was reportedly said by Bell through another media organization. He said his crime has even reached the level of the Prime Minister with the recent shooting of Latori Mackey. Rollins said we should be focused on more important things rather than an election.
It really is indicative when one considers that you have Minister of State for National Security calling for by-elections. It really reinforces and underscores the point that I made, that we need new political leadership in our country, because a Minister of State for National Security should be focused on the very serious concerns that Bahamians have about violent crime in our country. Violent crime is very serious, and when it gets to the level of impacting the office of the Prime Minister, where you have the press secretary for the Prime Minister being violently gunned down, and I'm not trying to be facetious when I say this, but it causes me to think that we seem to be living in an episode of the television series Scandal. And the facts of the matter are that violent crime is something that we have to pay a lot of attention to, and we shouldn't be giving lip service to the need to call a by-election or to have a by-election, using millions of scarce tax dollars to do something that advances somebody's personal political agenda and ambition. Come on, man, we better than that. The country is hurting. The Bahamian people are hurting economically. They're hurting from the fear of crime. And the last thing that should be on our minds is calling for a by-election.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Lux Men's Warehouse.